Hello and welcome. I'm Yuki. I want to start with something you might recognize. You go to bed at a reasonable hour. You sleep something like a normal night, and you wake up already tired before the day has asked you for anything at all. Most of us decide that means we need more sleep. So we go to bed earlier, and it doesn't help much. Then we blame our age or our work or the season. But I don't think that kind of tiredness is really about sleep. Where I grew up in Japan, I noticed something quite different, and it took me years of living away to understand it. The question most of us ask is, how do I get more rest? I'd like to offer you a different one to sit with today. Does your day ever actually end? Because I think that's the real difference. A day here has edges, small, ordinary moments that close one part of life before the next begins. And a day without edges never really lets you put it down. Let me show you what I mean. Let's begin. Before the doorway, though, there's an edge that happens at work, and it's a phrase. When people finish for the day here, they say something to each other, "Otsukare-sama desu." It's difficult to translate. It means something close to, "you must be tired," said warmly, as a thank you for the effort. You say it to your colleagues as you leave, and they say it back to you. Just a few words then. But notice what they do. They mark the work as over, out loud, in front of other people. The day doesn't just trail off while you keep half answering messages on the train. Somebody says, plainly, that the effort is finished and it was seen. I think being told your tiredness makes sense, that it's the ordinary result of a day's work rather than a personal failing. Takes a surprising weight off it. And it's said even on the days when nothing much was achieved, which is rather the point. Now picture the entrance of a Japanese home. There's a small space just inside the door, a step down from the rest of the house. We call it the Genkan. You stand there, take your shoes off, and step up into the home. I want you to hold on to that step, because everything else I'm going to talk about is a version of it. It's a line. On one side is outside, with its dirt and its noise and whatever the day did to you. On the other side is home, and you cross it deliberately, with your hands, every single time you come in. Nobody here would call that resting. It takes 4 seconds, but it's the first edge of the evening, and it's a physical one. Your body performs it, so your mind believes it. When I first lived abroad, I walked into my flat with my shoes on for months. I didn't notice anything wrong. I just felt, vaguely, like the day followed me inside and never quite left. Right after the shoes, there's a second small line, and it's one visitors almost never notice. You change your clothes. Most people here don't stay in what they wore out. You put on room clothes, something soft and shapeless that you'd never wear out of the house. It's not about comfort, exactly. It's that the person who dealt with the trains and the office is now finished for the day, and the clothes were part of that person. It sounds almost too small to mention, but if you stay in the clothes you worked in, some part of you stays available for work. Changing them tells you, plainly, that you are off duty now. My mother did this the moment she got home, before anything else, even before putting the shopping away. Then comes the biggest edge of all, and it's the one I'd give you first if you only took one thing from this. In the evening, you have a bath, not a quick shower to get clean. You wash first, outside the tub with a shower, and then you get into hot water and soak. We call this the afuro. In many homes, the same clean, warm water is used by everyone in the family, one after another, through the evening. The warmth loosens whatever the day has tightened. But the reason I'm calling it an edge is what comes after it. Once you've had your bath, the day is over. You don't go back out. You don't start a new task. Nothing more is asked of you. Growing up, the bath was the signal, and everyone in the house understood it. I still run a hot bath on the evenings when my head won't settle, and 10 quiet minutes in it puts the day a long way behind me. There's a detail in it worth noticing, too. Because you wash before you get in, the soak isn't a task at all. The cleaning is already done. You're sitting in warm water for no productive reason whatsoever. That's rare in a modern evening, where even the resting tends to have a purpose attached to it. A few minutes doing something with no use in it is, I think, closer to real rest than most of the things we call relaxing. I've written all of this down in a small book if you ever want it in one place. The link is below. Now, back to where we were. Around the same time, there's another edge, and it goes around the meal rather than after it. Before anyone eats, we say itadakimasu, and when the meal is done, gochiso-sama. They're hard to translate exactly. The first is something like, I gratefully receive. and the second thanks the meal and whoever made it. Most people don't mean them religiously. They're just said every time by everyone at the table. And what they really do is put a beginning and an end on eating. The meal starts here and it finishes there. It isn't food picked at while you work or grazed on standing up. Even now, if I eat without them, the meal feels like something that happened while I was busy rather than something I did. There's a habit inside the meal itself that matters here too. You eat until you're about 80% full, and then you stop. Hara Hachibu, it's called. The reason it belongs in a video about tiredness is simple, and you'll know it from your own life. A heavy meal takes your evening away from you. You sit down afterwards feeling like a stone, and whatever you'd hoped to do with those hours quietly disappears. Stopping a little early leaves you comfortable instead of weighted, so the evening still has something in it. It isn't restraint for its own sake. It's protecting the part of the day that's actually yours. And at the very end, there's the futon, which is a stranger edge than it looks. The bedding isn't left out. It gets laid out on the tatami at night and folded away into a cupboard each morning. So sleep has a beginning that you perform with your hands. The room becomes a bedroom, and in the morning, it stops being one. You don't live all day in the place where you sleep, and you don't sleep in the middle of your daytime life. I think that matters more than it sounds. A bed that sits there all day is an invitation to lie down at 3 in the afternoon and a reminder of tiredness every time you pass it. Bedding that's put away means the day has one room and the night has another, even when they're the same four walls. My grandmother folded hers away every morning for 90 years, and she never once called it a chore. Now let me say the part that all of this has been building toward, because I think it's the whole answer. None of those things is restful in itself. Taking off shoes isn't rest. Saying a word before dinner isn't rest. But together they do something that rest alone can't. They finish things. Here's what I mean. When a part of your day is never closed, some quiet part of you keeps holding it. The work that never officially stopped. The meal you never really sat down to. The evening that just dissolved into scrolling until you gave up and went to bed. None of those are heavy on their own. But you're still carrying every one of them all at once, and you're carrying them into your sleep. That's the kind of tiredness I mean. Not the tiredness of having done too much, the tiredness of nothing ever being finished. And you can't fix that with more sleep, which is why more sleep never quite works. You fix it by giving the day edges, small, physical, ordinary ones. That's all these habits are. A whole day made of places where one thing is put down before the next is picked up. Once you see it that way, you notice the same idea in places that have nothing to do with evenings. There's a word here, Ma. It means the empty space between things. In a room, in a conversation, in a piece of music. In a traditional room, the emptiness isn't what's left over after the decorating. The space itself is the design. A single flower in an alcove means something because nothing crowds it. And the same is true of a day. If every gap between two things is filled, the queue, the walk, the 2 minutes waiting for water to boil, all of it filled with a screen, then the day has no mat in it at all. It's just one continuous thing from waking to sleeping. Those small empty spaces are not wasted time. They're where a day breathes. And a day that never breathes is exhausting in a way that has nothing to do with how much you actually did. There's a small ritual that creates those spaces on purpose, and it happens all day long. Someone makes tea. Green tea sits on the table at breakfast, at work, after dinner, whenever a guest arrives. You wait for the water. You pour. You hold something warm for a minute before you go on. Nobody calls it a break, and it certainly isn't a rest in any serious sense. It's 2 or 3 minutes, but it's a pause that repeats. And a day with a dozen small pauses in it arrives at the evening in a completely different condition than a day with none, where you simply run flat out until you collapse into a chair at 9. In my grandparents' house, the teapot was never really put away. Someone was always just about to make another cup. I used to think that was about the tea. I don't think that anymore. And there's a reason the pause is tied to an object. You can't very well tell yourself to simply stop for 2 minutes. The mind talks you out of it every time. But you can put a kettle on. The rest is smuggled in inside a small, ordinary task, which is why it actually happens. Almost every habit I've mentioned works the same way. Nobody has to decide to rest, because the resting is built into something you were doing anyway. Movement here does something similar. and it surprised me when I finally understood it. Most people walk a great deal to the station, through it, to the shops, home again. Nobody calls it exercise, and nobody counts it. But that walk is often the only stretch of the day where nothing is required of you. You're not at home with its jobs, and you're not at work with its demands. You're in between, in the open air, with 20 minutes that belong to nobody. Some of my clearest thinking has happened on that walk, and I never once planned it. If you drive door to door, you can go an entire day without a single stretch of time like that, and the difference at the end of the evening is real. The room you come home to matters too, and this is one I resisted for years. Where I grew up, tidying happened in small amounts, every day, as you went. And it belongs here because of what an untidy room does to a tired person. A room with things scattered in it is quietly asking you for something. The pile on the table is an unfinished job sitting in your eye line. And you cannot properly rest inside a room that is still asking you for things. You can sit down in it, but part of you stays on duty. 10 minutes of tidying as you go isn't about a beautiful home. It's about being able to sit down in the evening in a room that has stopped talking to you. There's one more, and it's about the year rather than the day. Life here follows the seasons more closely than you might expect. In the food, in the festivals, in what people say to each other. Winter is treated as a slower, heavier, more inward time, and that's simply accepted rather than fought. You eat warmer food. You stay in more. You expect less of yourself, and nobody thinks that's a failing. Meanwhile, a great deal of modern life asks us to be exactly the same person in February as in June, at the same pace, with the same output. That flat, unchanging demand is tiring in a way that's hard to name. Being allowed to be slower for part of the year isn't laziness, it's just honest about being a person. Now I want to be careful and fair with you, because I'd be painting a false picture otherwise. Japan is not a country that has solved tiredness. People here work very long hours. Overwork is a real and serious problem, one with a name and a genuine cost, and I won't pretend otherwise. Nobody should look at Japan and think we've quietly worked this out while the rest of the world hasn't. What I'm describing is more like a counterweight. These small habits are the ordinary things people hold on to inside a demanding life. The shoes, the bath, the tea, the meal you sit down for. They don't make the days easy. They just make them close properly. And I think that's worth borrowing, exactly because life is demanding, not because it isn't. I should say one other thing plainly. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice. If you're exhausted for weeks on end and you can't find a reason for it, that really is worth talking to a doctor about, and I'd rather you did that than tried to fix it with a bath. So let me lay it out simply. The things that leave a day unfinished are these: work that never officially stops, meals eaten while doing something else, evenings that dissolve rather than end, a room still asking you for things, and every small gap filled with something. And the things that close a day are just as ordinary. Shoes off at a door, different clothes, a sit-down meal with a word at each end, warm water in the evening, bedding that gets put out and put away, small pauses threaded all the way through. If you want one thing to take from this, take a single question and ask it tonight. Where does my day end? Not what time, where? What's the moment? And what do you do with your hands to mark it? For a great many people, the honest answer is that it doesn't end at all. It just gets quieter until you fall asleep, and then it starts again. And I think that far more than the number of hours is why you wake up tired. Which brings me back to that small step inside the door. 4 seconds, both hands, shoes off, and up into the house. Nobody in Japan thinks of it as looking after themselves. It's just how you come home. But it's a line, and it's a real one. And a day with a few real lines in it is a day you can finally put down. You don't need all of this. Choose one edge and make it yours. Tonight, before bed, whatever it is. Then let the day be over and see how the morning feels. If you want more quiet ways to feel rested instead of running on empty, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.